that in time now we have a lot of like the trade turbulence behind us. I think it's a good time to like reset and sort of set your expectations for the back half of this year. Obviously, last year not always indicative of what we could see this year, but I remember that CPI print. Now that you mention it, back in July,
Buenos días,
when
¿cómo están?
it started to feel like good news was no longer
Se me olvidó que ya le había dado play al directo. Buenos días, espero estén bien. Vamos a ver en los mercados. Estoy buscando oportunidades. La última que encontré fue IXHL. No he cerrado la posición todavía. Vamos a ver cómo va, cómo va. Vamos a abrir una acá. Yahoo Finance. Y vamos a buscarla. Jajajaja. IXHL. Incanex Healthcare se llama la empresa. La compré en punto 22 centavos, ya está en punto 31, va bastante bien, va de maravilla. Antes de que hagan cualquier inversión, pues tienen que hacer su investigación, es un disclosure. Siempre lo pongo en los videos, es importante. Básicamente aquí yo lo que transmito es guiño guiño para quienes saben qué está pasando con estas empresas, porque prácticamente estoy colocando un escáner indiscreto o sin que se den cuenta y con buenas empresas, con grandes oportunidades. La mayor parte del tiempo, el 80% del directo. Ahorita tengo que investigar muchas empresas, tengo que buscar coyunturas de lo que va a pasar los próximos días para hacer otra IXL, otra Incanex. Tengo varias, tengo de aquí hasta las 2 de la tarde, que es cuando cierro la bolsa, entonces tengo que estar en chinga. Eso sí, vamos a estar viendo las viendo las inversiones, viendo las noticias. Y tengo que también darle la vuelta a las carteras de mis clientes, entonces tengo todo eso que hacer, ¿va? Bienvenidos. ¿Y qué más iba a ponerle? Creo que nada más hacer eso. Bienvenidos. Voy a poner esto en lo que mando mensajes a unos colegas.
On the surface, if you were just indicative, though, given the fact that just so much is going on here today. But let's get into some of our movers here, Jenny. We're going to keep the show moving fast, obviously, but still plenty and plenty to get through. Big story of the day is Uber, and that's where we're going to kick things off.
So some news today that is actually not focused on the analyst community. We are seeing some reports that Baidu and Uber are teaming up to deploy thousands of the Chinese company's autonomous vehicles across global markets on Uber's platform. So the companies did say this earlier today. The partnership will be increasing the supply of affordable and reliable ride-sharing options by bringing Baidu's robotaxi unit onto Uber's network. The first deployments are expected in Asia and Middle East, both later this year. And the terms of the partnership were not disclosed as far as the finances, but both Uber as well as Baidu's chief executives did really tout this deal, saying this is right now showing their commitment to really utilizing more of this autonomous driving technology to get more people in that market, as well as representing a major milestone now for deploying technology on a global scale. That was per Baidu's CEO. Uber CEO also said this brings together two of the world's most iconic technology companies to help shape the future of mobility. So definitely a positive development as far as the overall driving autonomy landscape that we're seeing evolve rapidly before our eyes. But Uber today down actually modestly, and also has seen some degree of a pullback since we did see all-time highs touched earlier this month.
Yeah, and you look at the stock today.
Ok. Lo que ahorita tengo que hacer es un listado, o sea, las empresas están en el screener, en el sistema financiero de Webull, pero tengo que, lo que estoy mostrando en pantalla es mi registro personal de empresas. Ahí anoto coyunturas y ese tipo de cosas, de hecho ahí se ven por sectores. Entonces, la primera empresa que yo tengo que buscar es Wolf. Chéquense esto, porque también hay que hacer dos cosas. Uno, analizar el gráfico. Si hay posibilidad de subida, primero. Dos, catalizadores que ayuden a esa acción. Y tres, que esté barata. Que esté barata. Porque si no está barata, la inversión se va a caer y vamos a perder dinero. Y a quién le gusta perder dinero, ¿verdad? Entonces, a ver. ¿Cómo va? 30 o 31. 32, genial. Genial, bien. Shiproy, mi concentración, aquí está esta cosa. Bien. ¿Qué tenemos? Bien. Entonces Wolf. ¿Qué tiene Wolf? Que pues obviamente quien la agarró aquí, pues estaba toda madre. No lo hicieron, no lo hicimos, pues vamos para acá. Entonces, Por cierto, tengo que, a ver, aguanten, tengo que...
You think this is a rational and kind of sustainable move, and there's a reason that it can keep going?
Well, the market always gets ahead of itself, Kelly. You and I both know that. So I'm not arguing that valuations are super compelling, but I am arguing that the technology behind it has sustainable power to continue to thrive in the coming years. Now, that said, we pivoted to energy earlier this year. We added to some of the energy infrastructure names like Quanta Services and Eaton and Emerson Electric even. And now we started to pivot to housing. So we added Sherwin-Williams in our growth portfolio a number of months ago. We've added 2 Home Depot, and this morning we were in buying one of the home builders. So a portfolio is a dynamic thing, but we're not necessarily doing that at the expense of technology. And I'll just point out one last thing. I've heard every summer for the last 3 years that technology was overvalued and the tech trade was done. We have been sellers in July, interestingly, and then adding back to positions in August through October in the last 3 years. That has paid off, and I think that's what investors should be thinking about. If you believe the AI trade is over, then you want to get out of these names. But I don't think it is. We're seeing it across all sectors. Companies are improving margins and citing productivity improvements, and I think that will continue. And that is the American exceptionalism story: efficiency over equality.
Which brings us to Tesla, and we don't have a ton of time here, but they are, I think, launching in India. Maybe I saw $70,000 price tag, what have you. Obviously, it's not a huge EV market yet, but you got to go to where ultimately the population and the demand is going forward. They also, I believe, had another executive departure today, and I can't remember what your take was on the stock the last time we talked.
I mean, we still like it. It depends on when you bought it. So we were we initiated our position when he was selling all of his stock around the X purchase at about $104 a share. We added to it in April at about $240. So we're not unhappy, even though the stock's down over 20% this year. We're not unhappy with our holdings long term. I think what you want to think about is Elon Musk back? I think he is. And I think there's been so many high-level departures. And then you have to believe in his vision. And he clearly thinks the vision is in AI and robotics. And that's what we've talked about, regime changes to that portion of the business. Yes, you need the EVs, but this is an AI company, and he is really pushing in that direction by having SpaceX invest in XAI and then putting it to shareholders, a shareholder vote. He did that with Solar City in 2016, and the stock, there were a lot of lawsuits. They went into Tesla's favor, and the stock's up 1,800% since that time.
Right, so it's a lot easier if you have a lower cost basis. And Elon has his work cut out now. Nancy, thanks. Appreciate you joining. Good to see you this afternoon.
Thanks.
Nancy Tangler with Laffer Tangler Investments. Another big stock mover today is CoreWeave, up 10% after announcing a $6 billion AI data center in Pennsylvania. Since its IPO, the stock has surged 260% now. My next guest has an equal weight with a $60 price target, and we're at 144. He did up his price target.
¿Qué iba a hacer? Sí, el diario. Son 11:09, tengo que ponerme mis tiempos porque si no, no la hago. O sea, básicamente el reto es este. Hay 50 empresas que analizar. El día de hoy solo se tiene que hacer una compra, una nada más, pero tiene que ser la elegida, la buena, la que tiene calidad. Si no lo hacemos, estamos jodidos, así de simple. Entonces, tengo que empezar. ¿Dónde está mi archivo? Aquí está. Bien, vamos con la primera. Wolf, necesito catalizadores. En lo que los busco, voy a poner esto.
To me, that's the risk. It's not that MasterCard's going to be a forgotten name and get cut out of this conversation. It's just they're going to have to invest in this technology. And through that, other companies are going to be doing the same, trying to win market share. And even if they hold on to market share, they're probably going to do so with lower margins because they're going to be collecting less per transaction.
Yeah, and that's well said.
Which is a win for consumers.
It is. And I think all of this, I think challenging some of the traditional legacy payment structures is great. But also, I think to your point, it's not going to be like, we don't see MasterCard at all have utility anymore. I think it's just going to be an evolving situation, which I think a great point that you said Uber disrupted the taxi business. Well, DoorDash has been seen as one that has disrupted not only probably the taxi and delivery business, but also just the grocery business as more so you can have these dashers do basically everything for you. The limit does not exist when it comes to now these stores in which these people will go and shop for you. It's amazing. But Jeffrey's,
Is that Mean Girls?
Did I just quote Mean Girls? I didn't even, you know, that's unfortunate, but I might have quoted Mean Girls. But yes, Jeffrey's today, though, with a downgrade to hold from buy, price target of 250, which was up from around 235. Saying they expect upside to consensus and peer-leading EBITDA growth, but this is not enough to drive share outperformance without assigning optimistic multiples to their non-core business. So they're recently ramping in affordability initiatives, but that could, at least in their opinion, limit some of this upside to their take rate, and right now view things as fairly valued, which I think we could make as the theme across the board of a lot of these names in these calls is, hey, these names have gotten expensive.
They have, but I got to tip my cap to DoorDash. I mean, there was a point where there was a lot of these names, and they were all competing for the same business, and seemingly Uber had the upper hand just because it had all of the different things, from logistics to moving people to delivering food, etc. And it sort of through those different channels was able to kind of, you know, be a little bit more resilient and continue to grow because their, you know, driver supply was just there. But Dash seems to have emerged as not only just competing with Uber, but really the leader in this food delivery space, whether it's just the partnerships they have with you know, popular restaurants and kind of the exclusivity that they have. I noticed that even in Chicago is someone who maybe defaults to Uber first. Sometimes you got to flip over to DoorDash, and they really remain relevant through that. But, you know, at this point, how do you value a company like this? Like at some point, I don't know that it's a business model that, I don't want to say it can't survive, because it can. It just seems highly, highly cyclical. Like if we do finally have a you know, significant, you know, not shallow, quick recession, but a deeper recession, which maybe we won't have one for a long time. Like this is ultra discretionary in terms of spend.
It is, and I mean, as someone that has used now probably DoorDash too frequently, it's the most discretionary. It's actually like the first thing I think of when I want to save money. I'm like, I've got to stop using these food delivery services so often.
Well, you realize just how expensive it is.
You do.
When you, like, you know, you go to the same place that you order from in person, and you know, even if it's a fast, convenient place, and or somewhere you've gone before, and you're like, wow, like, this might be a good 50% more expensive just to order it through DoorDash.
It is. It's like, I don't even want to say what like my Taco Bell order costs, because I know it would probably be 50% cheaper if you went in person. But some of those, like, especially lower cost items, I feel like it's when you really start to feel like, okay, I am overpaying.
There's also probably that element of, oh, if I'm going to have this delivered, I should at least spend some money to make it worth it if you're spending $5 on the delivery or whatever it is.
You got to ball out
tip.
then. Yeah, you absolutely. And to speak to the dominance, they have 60% right now plus of the market share in the U.S. of food delivery. So yes, an easy thing to say that they are the dominant force. Uber Eats is like 25% and some change. So then the rest make up that very small remaining market share. We'll leave it there, though, for our consumer-focused conversation with a lot of analysts thinking these names probably remain fair valued at current levels. But coming up next, it's time to discuss two names that we've seen dominate a lot of the headlines in the chip-making world. NVIDIA today with some positive developments out of China, as well as frequent flyer on this show now, CoreWeave.
Listo. Ok, a ver. Mercados a la baja, Nasdaq subiendo. Ok. Nvidia, ¿vieron Nvidia? De hecho ya tengo que venderla. De una cartera. 170. Vamos a vender Nvidia. Vamos a entrar acá. Ok. Y ya es hora de vender. De todas maneras, el índice de codicia sigue en los altos, o sea, el índice de codicia está en 75. Eso significa que los inversionistas están más enfocados a comprar que a vender. Entonces, pues sí, es complicado porque... Es complicado porque... Puta, ahí abajo. Sí, de hecho la debí de vender hace... Bueno, son $2 de diferencia, no es mucho. Vamos acá con Nvidia. 11.16, a ver, vamos a vender. El máximo son 300, a ver. Así para que pase. También el SID se veía atractivo. ¿Dónde está el SID? Aquí está el SID. Vean, en 2.34. O sea, tan solo comprarlo aquí 2.25 ha dado una ganancia muy poca, o sea, de 9 centavos por acción. Pero lo que quiero que vean es esto, es que es una penny stock, o sea, es muy barato. Y claro, esto se compra hoy, se vende el jueves, viernes, en cuanto suba, no es para siempre. No es una Nvidia, vamos. Vamos a checar esto. ¿Qué llama de voy a ver? Sí, vamos a ver. ¿Sí sigue arriba?
Trading at Schwab is now powered by Ameritrade, giving you even more specialized trading support. Connect with the Schwab Trade Desk, our team of passionate traders ready to tackle your trading questions, no matter how complex. Plus, get 24/7 live help and access support by phone, email, and in-platform chat. Trade brilliantly with Schwab.
Okay.
Trading the trending names
Precio
every
41,
day.
41. Bitmain se está aguantando, ¿verdad?
At 12 p.m. Eastern.
Sí, está
on the
resistiendo.
Schwab
Que
network.
resiste ahí. En 40, parece que 38.40 por ahora es su precio intrínseco. Esperemos. Porque yo en lo personal estoy arrastrando una posición grande ahí. Entonces, pues ya, compré más para estabilizar la pérdida, pero ahí va. Eso sí es a largo. O sea, yo les he dicho, Bitmain, entre SBET y Bitmain van a ser los próximos MicroStrategy de Bitcoin. Pero bueno, a ver, vamos a hacer esto un poco para acá. Y sigamos.
Hemet, that is all things NVIDIA with new highs today. We have since seen actually a pretty strong session as I was just checking in on things, about 4%. So not bad when you're the most valuable, most expensive company in the world.
So I kind of struggled with this segment a little bit, not because of the charts or the stock, because of the terminology. We all know this expression, don't try to catch a falling knife. There's not really a good, complimentary term for something making huge gains. You know, maybe don't step in front of the speeding train, or I don't know, something like that. But that's just what I keep thinking of, because NVIDIA keeps breaking out beyond these areas where the bears might have hoped for a slowdown or a stop. If we look at our first chart, 153, our red line there, represents an old high area here. We broke above that point. We held on during the retest. Now you can see that NVIDIA, for the most part, despite a bit of a slowdown in momentum, you can see that price had our blue steeper trend line starting with those April lows, transversing into a more modestly sloping channel in white there. But now we saw the bearish divergence in the RSI play out. The bulls came roaring back and once again pushed into that overbought area, and we're continuing to make new highs. So, really it's an interesting situation here. We are crossing above the upper boundary of our upward channel. So an upside breakout from a bullish pattern on a stock that's already seen almost 100% gain off the lows. It's just really an unusual, interesting situation.
It is, and so with a move like we're seeing today, and we're up about 4% on the session, I mean, does this complicate things? Does this add more, I'd say, sort of a murkiness to the outlook right now we're seeing in NVIDIA?
Yeah, somewhat here. And when we look at our technical chart here, we can see that, we don't have a lot of old price activity to go off of here, so we can try to use standard deviation channels. What I mean by that is we take our blue linear regression line, our line of best fit based on closing prices, then we take 1, 2 standard deviations to the upside. That's right about where price ended up yesterday and the previous day here, but we're pushing above that level now. So those old highs and that particular boundary around 166 or so, 167, that could be a supportive area to watch for a retest if price starts to wane a little bit here and people start taking profits, etc. But for now as well, to the upside beyond that, the +4 channel comes in just around 182 here. So not really all that far off considering the scale of the gains that we've seen in this name here. Much of the volume quite a bit lower, though. It doesn't really start to pick up significantly until around 142 or so. And if we were to just look at our 5-year chart, our last chart here, we can see that the broader shape, a very large channel type shape here, duplicating that trend line going across the lows. For now, NVIDIA is near that +1 weekly standard deviation channel near about 168. So, and really, it doesn't mean it's going to stop there. It just means this is a potential resistance point to consider here. But for now, looking like we're moving beyond even that.
Yeah, I absolutely. And a really compelling chart, especially when you look at the bigger picture there. So we appreciate that, Rick, for all of your insight always. And now as we do look to trade NVIDIA, as we frequently do on the show, we probably look at example trades once or twice a week. But for today's purposes, walk us through the thinking here.
Yeah, increasingly difficult, but no earnings till the end of the month. I believe that is confirmed now, end of August, I should say. So you do have some time to work with here if you want to avoid that. But the nice thing is if you go to the August 1st expiration, for example, is there is, plenty of strike availability, and you can even do things like a $2.50 wide spread, which we elected to here. Keep that risk contained to a lower notional value at risk, and still do something that's, let's say, neutral to bullish and allow you to participate even if NVIDIA just goes sideways over the next several weeks. So looking at the August 1st, 167.5, 165 put vertical, 80-cent credit. This is about a 2-to-1 risk reward, Jenny. You risk $170 with a chance to make 80. 166.70 would be the break even. Now, this would have been in the money just yesterday, so bear that in mind. NVIDIA's made a big move today. You are chasing it a little bit, so risk defined, but you're really asking NVIDIA to hold on to these gains over the next several weeks, which who knows what will happen, but if it does, you can make $80 here. And for whatever reason, if it does retrace, does test these levels, goes through your break even, and then through that 165 mark, your loss would be limited to that $170 mark.
Okay, yeah, and NVIDIA obviously with a pretty nice pop today, which, as you made a good point earlier, is a huge reason we've propped up so well in these markets, because the NASDAQ, I don't believe, would be as substantially higher today if we didn't have NVIDIA's participation. But next name today is newcomer CoreWeave. CoreWeave has been definitely one of note as well because it's been so volatile, so interesting to watch. Also a bit riskier when you're just looking at like a day-to-day move, but also for that reason, there's an interesting technical picture here, and I'm sure a bit more difficult, Rick. So walk us through your thinking for this one.
Sure. So this one, what we have here is a stock that has only been trading for a fairly short time. March 28th is when our chart goes back to. But since we hit that low, what day was it here? April 21st. We've almost quadrupled at this point here based on where we're at right about now. So really a strong surge to the upside here. And, now we can see, though, a bit of a retreat from those highs near 187. Unlike our last chart, kind of the opposite. In this case, we have a downward sloping channel between our two white dashed lines here. Normally, I include exponential moving averages on our charts. We don't have really enough data for those to work quite right. So these are simple moving averages. Our yellowish line, that's our 20-day simple moving average. Our blue line, that is our 50-day simple moving average. So that lines up at that 125 level with some old highs that we saw there. Then we had our breakout point, and that's where we retested just recently within the past couple sessions here. So 125 to the downside, then maybe even further than that, 104. That was the lows that we had during that breakout time period there. So those could be a couple of downside areas to watch. For now, though, the bulls would want to see a push above that channel and for RSI to make an accompanying breakout beyond not only its own trend line, but also that 50 midline. That would be a bigger shift toward the bullish side here.
So as far as CoreWeave goes, and I kind of buried the lead here, we're up 10% on the session, which is why we're really looking at it today. A huge move in CoreWeave to the upside. When you look at the longer term or the more, like, say, recent terms price activity, because I know we don't have a ton of history to go off of, but what else do you see? What else are you watching for as we zoom out and look at the longer term, maybe perspective here for CoreWeave shares?
Sure, and you know, it's just adding other elements to your chart can help make some decisions sometimes, or help you with additional information. In this case, what I like to overlay is our volume profile study here, especially because that is our blue bar graph on the right side of the screen, and the conventional volume study that you would see along the lower side of your chart there, that would tell you when the trading happened. Volume profile shows you where the trading happened, so you can see that obvious big spike centered around 150 or so there. That's a key area for the bulls to hold on to. That's where we dip below. Now it's kind of struggling to retake that level. So a push above, you know, 160, 165, that would be pretty noteworthy because that would be where price topped out several times. That's where volume really starts to thin out. That would be on the path to that 187 level then. And to the downside too, we can see a much smaller but similar node area between our two supportive levels that I mentioned. So around 104 to 110 perhaps, that's where the volume is further to the downside there.
Okay, yeah, so a lot to look at here, especially on a day we're making a 10.4% move to the upside. So we appreciate that, Rick, for all the technical help here with CoreWeave and NVIDIA. And now, before we go, let's check in on an example trade here in CoreWeave shares. Again, a nice pop today. Not a ton of price to go off of, historically speaking, but a name that's been definitely garnering a lot of attention as of late, at least.
No doubt about it. Very similar strategy. Again, a name that doesn't have earnings until kind of mid-August, so the earlier than NVIDIA, but still a little bit of time away from now. But short put vertical. Now, this stock is very, very volatile. So what you'll notice is it's a lower per share price, but we're actually able to get further away in the same expiration and get a little bit more favorable risk reward, just to reflect the potential movement that you do have for CoreWeave. So what we looked at here was a $3 wide spread instead of a $2.50 wide spread, and we're able to go to the 127, 124 line in that same expiration and collect $1. It's 2-to-1 risk reward. 126 would be the break even. You subtract that $1 credit away from 127. You risk 200, chance to make 100. So a lot of the same thinking that we just had in NVIDIA applied here, but because of the different dynamics in terms of the pricing of the options for CoreWeave, you can get a little bit further away, and you have just a little bit more optionality, no pun intended, because there's more strikes.
I like that optionality, no pun intended, but kind of pun intended there, because that does fit quite well.
Choice works as well.
Yeah, choice does work as well, but we'll leave it there for Chartmaster. Now, coming up next, it's time to look at FOMO. Today we're talking MP Materials, one that has been all over the headlines as of late, and today, no exception. We are up now 23.4% on the session, a standout mover to the upside. We'll tell you more why coming up next.
Me acuerdo cuando TNX explotó. Hubo un tiempo en el que explotó así.
Trading at Schwab is now powered by Ameritrade, unlocking the power of Thinkorswim, the award-winning trading platforms. Bring your trades into focus on Thinkorswim desktop with robust charting and analysis tools, including over 400 technical studies. Tailor the platforms to your unique needs with nearly endless customization, and track market trends with up-to-the-minute news and insights. Trade brilliantly with Schwab.
Get each and every angle, the whole picture. Everything comes full circle on Trading 360. Catch us right here at the New York Stock Exchange on Trading 360, only on Schwab Network.
What's up, Carl Nation? It's your #1 broker with the best full-service wealth management skills in the biz.
Actually, I'm seeing something from Schwab.
Schwab lets you invest and trade on your own.
And if you want, they can even manage it for you.
Not to mention, Schwab has a team of specialists for taxes, insurance, and estate planning, all with low fees.
We're experiencing technical difficulties.
Schwab, a modern approach to wealth management.
Investor or just getting started, Charles Schwab offers a webcast that's right for you. Are you a long-term investor? Our investing webcast series breaks down different investing styles.
Es impresionante el tiempo. A ver.
Education Coach. It's interactive learning at its finest. Tune in live or on demand. Head over to schwab.com/coaching and start learning today.
Empower your portfolio with the Schwab Network. Available anytime, anywhere, on any device for free. Schwab Network.
Accelerate your market knowledge
and shift your perspective into full gear. Real-time example trades, a full hour of trading insights.
I'm Tom White.
I'm Kevin Hayes. Catch me on Fast Market, weekdays at noon on the Schwab Network.
Fast Market, ready for you, ready to go at 12 p.m. Eastern on the Schwab Network.
Welcome back to Next Gen Investing. It's now time to discuss a name that has really started picking up a lot of volatility and just volume as far as trading interest over the last several sessions and last week or so. That's MP Materials today inking a pretty major deal with Apple, $500 million. So definitely not a small one at that. Joining us now, though, to give us more details on this development is Diane King-Hall, the host of Morning Movers. So Diane, walk us through the latest with MP Materials. It's up now about 23% on the session.
Yeah, on track for a record. Those shares charging higher for MP Materials. As you mentioned, $500 million. That's how much Apple is committing to identifying sources of rare materials here in the U.S. and boosting the supply chain here in the U.S. So Apple's inking this deal with MP Materials. That's sending shares of MP Materials higher, as you mentioned, by more than 20%. At this rate, it's going to close at a record today. This is to secure both a domestic source of rare earth materials, and it's not just about it being a domestic source, also a sustainable source. They're essentially prepaying MP Materials this hefty sum so MP can build this critical mass here and guarantee Apple essentially first dibs on these magnets that say go in your iPhone, other devices, and it's not just about the iPhone, EVs, etc. All these rare earth magnets are a big part of the things that we don't even always think about. So, you know, let's say our Apple Watches or, again, EVs, wind turbines, etc. MP would supply the rare earth magnets made at its Fort Worth, Texas facility using recycled materials. So, again, it's not just about domestic, it's about sustainability as well. And those are the materials that would have been processed at its Mountain Pass mine in California. Keep in mind, MP is the only miner of rare earths here in the U.S. As you know, China has a near monopoly on rare earths. As we know, that was a big part of coming to some kind of agreement between the U.S. and China because they have a stronghold of almost 90% of that market. So with this deal with Apple, this is a tailwind for MP Materials. It's all, again, about the U.S. supply chain, the deal aligning with Apple's push to localize critical mineral sourcing and localize more sourcing in general of parts. We know that there's been pressure from the Trump administration for Apple to do more work within the domestic economy and reduce its reliance on China. It also, you know, complements some recent deal news that we'd heard with regard to a public-private partnership with MP Materials and the Department of Defense, guys.
Diane, you know, there's some trades in hindsight that you kick yourself and say, wow, was this one obvious? And I think this firmly applies. Now, the thing that I do think is important to highlight is we call them rare earth, but it's really not the abundance of the actual elements that's rare. It's the production and extraction of them that's rare. And as you said, China has such a stronghold on that production at the moment. Investment into an MP from these companies makes a ton of sense. When you are talking, I don't know if you've talked to anybody about this company in particular, but when you hear about rare earth, is there that similar feeling of surprise that it seems like the administration maybe had that, hey, we're really relying on China for this.
Tal vez así se ponga más
Well, what I
oscuro
can say is it's clear that, you know, there was a need for expansion here in this sector. And again, it's not just about what China produces here, and or produces rather on that front. Part of this with MP Materials is also the sustainability piece of this, because there will be a recycling facility, there will be a new facility as well, not just the one in Texas. They're going to create one in California as well, where they will, instead of digging out of the ground, as we talk about the rare earths, they will grind up, say, old motors, hard drives, factory scraps, and then reuse those metals. So that kind of points to the circular economy and helps in terms of the issue of these components essentially being rare. And so Apple will get to say its devices are made out of items that are lower carb, that reduces their carbon footprint, and it's relying on more recycled materials. So that contributes to the sustainability piece, and also, you know, reduces its reliance on simply the rare aspect of this. Alex.
Yeah, and that's also a good point there. And we're in real time learning so much about this entire space. It's not one that I had frequently discussed very often until just the last week or so, but it's definitely one where I do think the various ways in which these elements are formed and the ways in which they can be extracted, the processing behind it is so interesting and so unique. And that's what's also driven, I think, just a lot of my own personal focus of the story, but definitely helping MP Materials with that massive deal with Apple, one of the behemoths of the entire market at itself. So appreciate that, Dan King Hall, for all of that insight as always. And now, before we go, as we do look to trade this name, I think it's difficult because there's also the thinking, I mean, there's a total FOMO feeling that you would have missed the boat a little bit, but that's not to be said. I mean, a lot of times you can make the argument of NVIDIA hundreds of dollars ago, you could have said, oh, you missed the move, but now in hindsight, you didn't.
Yeah, I was talking about actually with Diane on Trading 360 Oklo, because I think Oklo in some ways has similar dynamics, right? It's like this future of nuclear power, and it seems like it might have this tremendous upside if done right. Similar seems to be kind of forming around this rare earth discussion. And I think investors in many ways aren't, completely immune to the idea that, hey, this stock's run a long ways, maybe it is due for a retracement, maybe I want to limit my risk, but I want to have upside in case this party keeps going. And so I structured this trade similar to those who caught that segment on Oklo for disruptors for this one, where you risk a small amount, but if this move continues on this trajectory, you stand in a situation where you can make a large amount relative to the risk. And so it's an out-of-the-money call vertical in which you're basically buying, again, all the way out of the money call, selling a further out of the money call, looking to spend a small amount relative to the reward. So in this case, it's the 65.75 August 1st call vertical spread. You'll risk $150. But if the stock does continue to rally, gets all the way to 75 by basically August 1st, it can make 850. So you risk 150, chance to make 850. Break even is 66.5. So you're going to need a new all-time high just to break even. Now, whenever you see a situation, and it's up on the screen, it says, hey, I'm risking 150, I can make 850. The first thing that should go off is, flashing, sirens is, this probably isn't the highest probability of success, Jenny, right? You wouldn't make this deal if this was, some sort of an outcome that was split even 50-50. But if you do think over this next several weeks that MP Materials is going to continue to run higher, and you want to structure a trade that'll benefit, this one could, but you would need to see obviously that upside, even just to break even of almost, actually over 10% at this point, just to break even. But if it got all the way to 75, 150 in risk, chance to make 850.
Yeah, and so a way to utilize, some of the nice upside we've seen in this name, up 22% today, having now 23% to give it some credit there, but having a continuously phenomenal year-to-date performance, as well as MP is up now about 270% and some change on the year. So a really phenomenal run. We'll still be off of actually highs by about 5% that were just touched earlier today. We'll leave it there, though, for the MP Apple discussion. Now, coming up next, it's time to discuss the latest with chip and hardware stocks, as we did see China giving this conditional nod to Synopsys and the Ansys deal, removing the last major hurdle, and what this means for the entire space as a whole, coming up next.
Básicamente esto es lo que tengo que evitar. es que hayan tenido ya este comportamiento alcista. Y sí, la semana pasada tuvieron un comportamiento muy alcista, o sea, ya fue, simplemente déjenlo. Siempre esta es la de paso, todas son de paso. O sea, tomamos una buena oportunidad, la vendemos, listo, vámonos a la siguiente. Entonces, a ver, ¿quién sigue? ¿Quién sigue? Wolf ya pasó. BBA ya se compró, esa ya se compró, de hecho, ver si la vendo, porque su máxima, es que también su máxima fue de 8.72. Aunque esta empresa estaría bien tenerla para largo plazo. Es buena. OCGN, vamos con OCGN, a ver. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ahí está. OCGN. Therapy portfolio.
Day, it's really in the belly of the curve, and it's the real rate component or TIPS yields. I think that has to do with the monetary policy outlook, this idea that inflation is coming from tariffs. I think that's totally wrong. As we discussed last time, I was on set back in June. Inflation is always and everywhere a fiscal and monetary phenomenon. So if you just consider the conditions that exist today versus 2021, I look back at the CBO budget report in March 21, spending was up for the first 6 months of that fiscal year 45%. Right now, it's up 5%. That's slowed from 7%. And on a month-on-month basis, it was down 7%. So fiscal policy, the sending of checks to everyone that facilitated the big spike in goods prices during the whole COVID supply chain related disruptions, is in the opposite position it was back in 2021. The same is true of monetary growth. Money supply was expanding 27%. Right now it's expanding 4%. So 50-year average is 6-7. So we're not going to get a big inflation surge here. And I think we're going to see very soft growth numbers over the next month that are going to convince the Fed that Waller's right. You know, that as the dust settles or dirt settles, as Goolsbee put it, the Fed should have been easing and will find themselves behind the curve in September, just like they did a year ago.
If so, would you say we should all be buyers of bonds here, that these rates are coming down? Or do you think they're high because of what's going on with the debt and deficit or what's going on with the independence, quote unquote, of the Fed?
Okay.
Well, for the, it's funny, I gave a speech to a bunch of energy CEOs in Denver last week, and my net takeaway was still that you should be underweight the back end of the Treasury market. I've been at 70-30 all year, 70% stocks, 30% bonds. There are some other things going on in the back end of the Treasury market for sure. I mean, the JGB markets.
No me gusta porque ya tuvo su subida, o sea, de 0.51 a 1 duplicas tu inversión, es decir, como por acá. Luego llegas a 1.20, o sea, te entregó el 130 no, esperen, 150, 160% de tu inversión. Ya se cae por aquí al 90 y 1.10, ok. Pues sí pasa, pero para futuro, ahorita no. De todas maneras, tengo que copiar esto, porque esta información yo la voy a revisar la otra semana. Entonces yo necesito ver que ya trabajé en algo ahí para no estar desactualizado con esa empresa. Listo. Después, acá que tenemos principales, aprobación de la FDA.
More was one of the really kind of unique amendments to this deal that China had to, or wanted the world to agree to before it would give it permission to go on.
Se cancela.
So, if
el 20 de julio están esperando una aprobación. A ver. OCGN. 20 de julio. Es decir, si estamos a 15 y es martes, 16, 19, 20. Puta, va a ser el domingo. O sea que habría que comprarlas máximo el viernes. A ver. Vamos a ver si es cierto. Cogen recibe la aprobación para iniciar ensayo. Esto fue en abril. Cogen anuncia la aprobación agosto. 8 de abril, 5 de abril. Monitorear, a ver, aquí tengo una. Me pica mi pierna. Ahí está. Clinical trials. A ver, condition, other terms, location, search. Interesante. No, vamos. Sí siento mi compu lenta. Pero a pesar de toda la carga que le estoy dando, a ver, este ahorita no lo estoy usando. Vamos a borrarlo. Salir de Opera. Listo. Este sí lo estoy usando. Pero más al rato inclusive. Lo puedo hacer más chiquito. Ahí está. A ver.
So this was one of those pieces of news where I feel like it was like the mutually beneficial deal where it's sure it benefits us in the U.S., but I mean, it's also accretive to China as well. And I mean, like, do you see this relationship continuing to hopefully blossom? Maybe blossom is too strong of a word, but mend itself from here? I mean, like, is this going to be now a major headwind cleared for a lot of these U.S.-based chip makers?
It is a tremendous sigh of relief, I believe. Now, there still will be probably pockets of chips that will not be allowed to escape from the U.S. That's just the way it's always been. It's just the way it's going to be. They will escape, but it's probably at a much lower volume than China really wants. So I think that this is really a sigh of relief, and hopefully it spills into other industries, right? Yeah. Maybe tariffs. I don't know. Let's take a run at that.
I was going to say, I think we're all hoping for that as well, for this entire hurdle to be cleared outside of just the chip makers, because we need it to benefit other areas of the economy as well. I could not agree more. And so hopefully put all these headlines behind us. But we'll leave it there. So appreciate your time today, Kim Forrest, the founder and, of course, Chief Investment Officer at Boca Capital Partners. Now, coming up next, last but not least, it's time for Under 30. We're talking Joby Aviation today, rallying on some positive developments here, and finally, hopefully, some improvement to its profitability story, as we're up now about 7.8% on the session.
Me caga.
Trading at Schwab is now powered by Ameritrade, giving traders even more ways to sharpen their skills with tailored education. Get an expanding library filled with new online videos, webcasts, articles, courses, and more. All crafted just for traders. And with guided learning paths, stacked with content curated to fit your unique goals, you can spend less time searching and more time learning. Trade brilliantly with Schwab.
I'm Nicole Petalides, host of Trading 360 and The Watch List, live on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, where we bring you breaking news, experts, CEOs, influencers, and analysts. It's all available on Schwab Network.
Whether you're a bull or a bear, you'll want to catch the latest market action on Morning Movers with me, Diane King Hall, live from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, only on Schwab Network.
Download the Schwab Network app and join in on the latest market trends. Anytime, anywhere, on any device for free. // 'Schwab Network.
'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. 'Schwab Network. ' 37, qué maravilla. Pero qué maravilla.
Welcome back to Next Gen Investing. It's time for Under 30 today, and we're talking Joby Aviation, which is up 7.8%. So joining us is Marley Caden for more insight on this nice move to the upside, which we frankly are in need of a liftoff, which no pun intended, but it's so easy.
It was an easy one. We'll give it to you, Jenny. Yeah, like you said, Joby Aviation up on the day. Shares touched a 4-year high on news that Joby is set to double production at its California facility. So the expanded facility will be able to produce 24 aircrafts a year, which is currently double what it's doing right now. In addition to that, the California site will have FAA production certification. It will have flight testing components, pilot training simulators, aircraft maintenance, and it strengthens the company's manufacturing network. So it did hit that new 52-week high. That was up at 1372. Right now we're trading right around that 1360 mark. It's just been a really remarkable stretch over the last few weeks for the company. In just the last 3 months, the stock has more than doubled. It's pushed its market value up above $10.6 billion. But most notably, they had their successful test flights in Dubai last month. They were able to do the vertical ascent and descent. They made successful landings. That's a key moment that's put them squarely in the spotlight for this new emerging market of the air taxi space, which they're hoping to start operating in Dubai and then roll out a commercial service in the UAE by next year. And also they have plans to bring it to the US, to LA and New York with partnerships with Delta and Uber. So a big success for them. They also had another recent breakthrough that comes from their German subsidiary H2 Fly. They had a major milestone. They did their first hydrogen electric flight. They completed a 523-mile zero-emission flight. So if they can continue these kinds of successful test flights, it could mean a major shakeup to the industry, potentially one that certainly has far less climate impact than as we currently view, and could potentially eventually put it in competition with regional air travel that, the big names we're used to talking about.
There's certainly markets within the U.S., heavily trafficked, I'd say downtown Manhattan to some of the airports. You could see the use cases for these. But it really seems like we're just years away from being in the Jetsons. It's just how quickly technology is advancing here, and companies like Joby are pushing this forward. I am interested to hear how quickly they're going to get past some of these regulatory hurdles. But I imagine successful rollouts in places like the Middle East will help that.
Yeah, they're shooting for that Dubai air taxis. They had those successful flights. They're going to do another round of test flights, but they are saying they plan to roll out that commercial service, and they are on track to do it in the UAE by 2026. So investor belief seems to be strong. Analyst opinion seems to be somewhat bullish on them with these recent successes, but obviously, as the tests continue, the successes need to keep for that sentiment to stay. But, as I look at their chart, year to date, they're up 67% right now. They're up 95% over the last 12 months. So certainly an upward trajectory for them, I assume clearly driven by the fact that they're having all of these successes that do seem to propel us, like you said, Alex, one step closer to feeling like we're in the Jetsons. But they're outperforming the S&P 500 just on the year by more than 9 times. So, a pretty impressive growth story.
And so I do know that they're not the only ones in this space. There's Archer Aviation, for example. And is there a lot of analysts that even cover a name like Joby, or are we seeing just a more analyst light type name because of the fact that it's, still so experimental? To Alex's point, we're still years away, but it does also say, hey, if you're a believer of this technology and the fact that we're zero emission flights already, I know not mass flights from that perspective, but all things considered, that's a huge step for consumers. I'm wondering more about the way the sell side feels about this today.
The coverage is a touch light, like you said. They have two analysts covering them right now, so it is low. I did read both of their reports. They are on the bullish side of sentiment. They are impressed by recent performances, both in test flights and in terms of their earnings. But, we know with these companies, as soon as something goes wrong, something goes horribly wrong for share price.
And that's a good point as well, where, I mean, like, you need basically like no catastrophes, because that would be, I mean, the unraveling of all this nice upside we've seen in shares. So to give them credit, it's been an outperformer. We appreciate it. Marley Caden, contributor here for the network. That will also do it for Alex and myself for Next Gen Investing. For, of course, this Tuesday, we have the watch list coming up next.
Sí, claro, ya se acabó la fiesta.
Schwab Bank Investor Checking, the checking account built for investors. Named highest in client satisfaction by J.D. Power for 7 years in a row. With Investor Checking, you get the award-winning features of our checking account, plus cash management solutions, all designed for investors like you, with unlimited ATM fee rebates for cash withdrawals worldwide, no overdraft fees, and enhanced security features to keep your money safe. Also, because your investor checking account is linked to your Schwab One brokerage account, you can manage your checking and investing in one convenient location. Moving funds between your accounts is easy. Cash moved to your brokerage account is available in seconds. That means you can stop waiting and start investing in stocks, bonds, money market funds, and more. Get more with Schwab Bank Investor Checking, the checking account built for investors.
Whether you're an experienced investor or just getting started, Charles Schwab offers a webcast that's right for you. The Platforms and Tools webcasts are designed to help you broaden your knowledge of platform features and resources available from Schwab. You'll learn tips and tricks to help navigate Schwab.com, Thinkorswim, and mobile-based platforms. Best of all, you can ask questions by chatting directly with an education coach. It's interactive learning at its finest. Tune in live or watch on demand. Head over to schwab.com/coaching and start learning today.
¿Qué pasó, amiguito?
The case, but they've been winning a dominant share in restaurants, which was also a really competitive field with a large number of very well-funded companies. So we have to ask ourselves why. And the reason is just a commitment to, execution against, iteration of small things across endless number of corner cases and ironing that out to serve their three-sided marketplace, consumers, merchants, excuse me, and the delivery folks themselves. So I think that is a repeatable competency. That is the reason they won in restaurants and can continue to win in other categories.
They can
go
take it.
Okay.
Stressed debt tied to hard assets. The S&P 500 continues to grind higher for the big picture, in fact, hitting new record highs this morning, but showing some signs of potential short-term pause. Our guests will explain. And in our panel, our discussion will be all about inflation. As inflation cools and has been a little softer, we're still watching shelter, gasoline, and all eyes on the real average down 339 points. The S&P, which hit a record this morning and crossed 6,300, is down 3 points. The NASDAQ is still holding on here, and that's up more than 0.5%. This, as NVIDIA has been an incredible